Now, some of you have heard rumors today that I am here to talk about gay rights. And that is true, but before we move on and before some of your eyes inevitably glaze over, I just want to point out a few things. I have not come here today with banners or placards. It's still relatively early in the day, so I have left my megaphone at home. I'm not going to stage a kiss-in, even though I secretly think they're sort of hot. And I haven't brought any rainbow frosted cupcakes that are secretly laced with broken glass, so you don't have to worry. I want to put it out there that I do not have anything against straight people. I feel that I'm a progressive person, and I want to put it out there that some of my best friends are straight people. My brother and my three sisters are all straight. Both of my parents are straight. My boyfriend, no, that doesn't make any sense. The point I want to make is that straight people, when it comes to you and I don't think we have that much that's different. For instance, straight men, I enjoy wearing flannel. I like drinking beer and scotch. I like listening to old country music. One of my favorite things in the world are jokes about poos and farts. Straight women, I enjoy baking. And I enjoy clothes shopping, and I enjoy men. So I feel like we've got some common ground to work with. And the reason I want to bring all of those points up is when it comes to discussions about gay rights, I think there is this wrong perception that what gay people want and what straight people want are fundamentally different. Now, it upsets me when gay people look at straight people and they think of them as the enemy. And I think when straight people look at the gay rights movement, they'll probably have one of three reactions to the movement that's happening at the moment. One is outright hostility, they don't support it. Two, they do actively support it. They sign petitions and they write letters. But I think the majority of people probably fall into the third category, which is they look at the movement and they think, what has this got to do with me? And I think this is a very good and legitimate question to talk about. What do gay rights have to do with straight people? And I want to return to this topic, so hold me to it. But before we do, let me take you back in time. Let me take you back to the mid-90s when I was 12 years old and I was this scrawny Asian dude, even scrawnier than now. And I played the clarinet, and I had scoliosis, and I had an orthodontic plate permanently shoved into my face. Weirdly though, I was quite popular, and I had a lot of friends at school, and I liked going to school. But no one knew I was gay, and even at that age, I knew that I was, and after school, I would lie in bed at night, and I would look at my glow-in-the-dark stars plastered on my ceiling, and I would wonder to myself, what I think maybe a lot of other 12-year-olds wonder about, which is, am I going to die alone? Now, I wondered this. I wondered this because at that stage of my life, I did not know any other gay people. I'd never encountered them, and I wouldn't for many years afterwards. But I certainly had heard of them, and what I had heard was that gay people were perverts, that gay people were pedophiles, and I understand that with this moustache today, how you would draw that conclusion. I heard that gay people were out to ruin the very moral fabric of society. Either that or they were mincing queens, so gay people were either to be feared or mocked. Now, it's a horrible thing when you're 12 years old and you're thinking that you might end up dying alone, but it's horrible to have evidence all around you that supports that claim. So I spent most of my teen years carrying around this information by myself, like most young queer people do, and dreading the idea of coming out to my family. Now, I eventually did this when I was 17 years old, and the first person I came out to my family, the first member that I came out to was my mother. And it was a very frightening experience, and I was sitting down with her in this sort of tearful, messy, fitful panic of sobs, and I was waiting for her reaction. And what she said was actually quite lovely. She said, "There is nothing wrong with being gay. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. It just meant that something went wrong in the womb. You can't help it." And since then, my mother has been very supportive of me, and as have the rest of my family and of all of my friends, because I'm one of the lucky ones. Now, we know that not all people are so lucky, and I think even the most casual observers of the news will have heard of a recent series of youth and teen suicides that have come out as a direct result of anti-gay bullying. Now, these aren't just statistics. I want to put names to these people, some of them. For instance, Seth Walsh, who is 13 years old, was mercilessly bullied in the school ground for being gay, couldn't stand it anymore and found some rope and he hanged himself. His mother found his body and spent a week with him on life support until he died. Asher Brown was 13 years old too. He was bullied relentlessly for a perception that he was gay. He couldn't stand it anymore either, and he put a shotgun in his mouth and blew his brains out. William Lucas was 15 years old, was mercilessly bullied for being gay, did the same thing. He found some rope and he hanged himself too. Now, these are only 3 cases, but I just want to emphasize the fact that these people were kids. Now, of course, that's the United States, and we're gathered here in the State Library of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, so maybe we can put a more local perspective of things. Let's look at Queensland, let's look at Australia. Where are we now? So 20 years ago, we decriminalised homosexuality, and that wasn't actually that long ago. I'm 28 years old now, so there was a significant period in my life where the person I was, or at least the person I would grow up to be, was effectively a criminal. And people were put in jail, they were fired from their jobs, they were shunned from their communities, or they got married and they hid it really, really well. Coming out in any era and any area is very difficult, but back then it literally put your life at stake. So how far have we come in 20 years? Well, I would say that in a lot of ways, we've come a pretty long way. On a federal and state level, we've removed a lot of discrimination against same-sex couples and against LGBT people in general. On another sense, I'm not sure we've come that far. A report earlier this week showed that 1 in 3 Queenslanders believe that homosexuality is immoral. That effectively makes us the most homophobic state in Australia. A recent study that was done 2 years ago surveyed over 160 young people between the ages of 12 and 20 who lived in Queensland and identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. What did that survey find? The survey found that over 80% of those young people had suicidal thoughts. Over 80% of those young people had been bullied at school, and that the majority of that bullying had gone unreported or was ignored by the school itself, and that 1/3 of all of these young people had tried to commit suicide at one stage, and that 2/3 of all of these young people did not feel safe at school. Now, I really want to emphasize that point in particular because school is where we spend most of our time outside of the home. And when you feel unsafe in that environment, you're spending a lot of your life feeling unsafe. Now, I feel like there's something profoundly wrong about all of this, and not just those stats themselves, which are obviously upsetting and distressing, but the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't think any of us, especially if we grew up in Queensland, are particularly surprised at them. Saddened? Yes. Upset? Probably. Surprised and shocked? No. Did any of us audibly gasp when I told you all of that? No. And why not? Well, maybe you can tell me. I mean, this is a TEDxYouth event, and most of you are here because you're between the ages of 16 to 25. So you're either at high school at the moment or you have recently left high school. I'm 28, there isn't that much difference between me and school. And we know how the schoolyard works. We know that gossip spreads around like a rash. We want to know who is gay, who's lesbian, who's bisexual, who's transgender, and we laugh at homophobic jokes. And I know that I definitely did because I didn't want to be found out. So why aren't we surprised at any of this? Because we know how schoolyards work. Now, if you're straight, and I'm assuming many of you in this room are, you will listen to this and you probably have not been the victim of anti-gay bullying, and maybe you have not been a culprit either, and you're asking that question that I asked at the start, which is, what has any of this got to do with me? So why don't we talk about straight people for a while, because you know you are a segment of the population we don't talk about enough. And but when we're talking about straight people, I acknowledge that straight people are a diverse community. So we can narrow it down a little bit further. Why don't we talk about straight guys, okay? Straight guys. How does homophobia affect straight guys? Well, a study was done in the 1980s in the States that showed how homophobia affected straight guys. What they found was that when kids started going to school in grades 1 and grades 2, they were holding hands, and they were hugging before class and over lunch. And if you talk to any parent or teacher who works in an Australian school, they'll tell you the same thing. This is what young boys do at that age, and it's very cute and lovely. By the age of 10, the anti-gay taunts start. People start calling each other fag and queer, and they're not hugging each other anymore. They're not holding hands. They are mock punching each other and high-fiving each other instead. And by the time that they're teenagers, they're going to movies together, for instance, but they are not sitting together. They are sitting with seats in between them because they are afraid of being seen as, you guessed it, gay. So homophobia, I propose, does not just affect gay people. I think it affects us all. It affects our relationships with each other. It affects our behavior and what we do with our lives. So we'll stop listening to certain music in case it's seen as gay. We'll stop doing certain sports in case it's seen as gay. We'll stop talking to each other in certain ways in case it's seen as gay. And I think this is a very sad thing. Now, straight guys, if you seriously are confused about what is or isn't gay, maybe I can help out, because I am gay, so I should know. And I just want to clear the air, and feel free to take notes, because I know some of you have pen and paper today. Talking about each other's feelings, that is not gay. Telling another guy that he looks good today is not gay. Hugging, even kissing another guy is not gay, it's European. Ewan McGregor does it, so do my Spanish friends. You do not need to be so paranoid. Now, speaking of paranoia, maybe we can talk about same-sex marriage for a bit. Now, same-sex marriage has been in the news recently because there has been a successful motion passed in federal parliament earlier this week by the Greens member for Melbourne, Adam Bant. That means that all MPs will have to go into their electorates and gauge their constituent sentiments on gay marriage, and I feel this is a very good step forward. Now, opponents to gay marriage will look at this and they'll say, why are you trying to politicise marriage? Now, I'd hate to kill the vibe, but your marriage is already politicised for you. If you are a straight person who is already married, or a straight person who is planning to get married, you are married under an act that says, marriage is a union between a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others. Now, people stand by that act and say, well, that comes from tradition. But in fact, that statement in the Marriage Act was introduced in 2004 by the Howard government and pushed through the Senate. Marriage may be a personal act, but it's also a political act. Now, some of you will want to get behind this cause, and I think that's a fantastic thing, and you might do it in several ways. Some of you like to be traditionalists, and you will sign letters, and you will sign petitions, and I think that's very, very valuable. Others of you, that's not your style, and you want to get married. Or some of you will boycott marriage, like Brad and Angelina, because you won't believe in marriage until everyone can get married. But I also understand that some of you come from immigrant families and they are very impatient and you will want to get married as soon as possible. Maybe what you'll want to do instead is to ensure that all the services that go towards your wedding, like a florist and the dressmaker and the cake designer and the planner, are all gay or gay owned. And when you think about it, that's probably not that hard. In fact, you might be doing it already and not even know. So join me. And I promise to you that if you do, and the anti-gay bullying starts to recede, and same-sex people can get married, You will be invited to these weddings, and they will be awesome. And they will contain the types of things that straight people like good alcohol and great conversation and excellent company and bad jokes, because weirdly enough, that's what LGBT people like as well. Like I said at the start, we don't have too much that's different about us. In fact, we've got a lot in common. You could even go as far as to say that we're equals.